Welcome to Musings on Mysteries in the Mythical Matrix. Ladies and gentlemen, mystery seekers, musers, conspiracy theorists, interdimensional philosophers, seekers of truth, and last but certainly not least, all of you that desperately cling to your confirmation bias. Whether your interest is Atlantis, Zeus, or anything in between, we tackle it all from our quantumly entangled castle tucked away in the ancient flood-battered Central Pangaean mountain range. We're a podcast dedicated to exploring the ancient, mysterious, and unknown with logic and reason, and where we also theorize the fourth dimension exists and is the spiritual. The only trigger warning for this episode is a logical conversation, so if applying the Socratic method on fringe topics is disturbing to you, turn off the podcast now. And this is going to be a very logical episode, as we're finally to one of my favorite topics, Logical Fallacies 101. Welcome to the course, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'm joined by my wife, Madison, and she's going to give us our psychology fact before we start getting into the meat and potatoes, and I start ranting about logical fallacies and why we're doing this episode.
Hey, y'all. So today, my fact is if somebody else yawns and you yawn, that is because of your brain's mirror neurons, which ties into your empathy. So if you yawn and somebody else does not yawn, pretty much means that they're a psychopath.
If done over time, because sometimes people don't always do it the first time, and it doesn't mean they don't have empathy. It just means that maybe they didn't see you, they weren't paying attention, whatever other reason. But consistently over time, if you yawn at someone and they don't ever yawn because of you, then either they're a psychopath or they just don't care about you. Yeah,
but also the mirror neurons, that's because we imitate the actions of others, to strengthen social interactions and everything and bonds.
It's like a biological component to our brains that's there to help us connect with people socially.
Yes.
It's like biological drive to help fuel the social aspect of humankind.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, no, that's a good fact. Psychopathy was actually what I wrote a paper for one of my undergrad classes before I graduated. So psychopaths are definitely an interesting topic, that's for sure.
Well, sociopaths are too, but
yes, not the same thing.
It is not.
Anyway, we digress here because that's going to lead me down a whole nother rabbit hole. So I don't want to go down there today. So the reason for this episode is because I have been on the internet. Honestly, I feel like I could leave it at that. I really don't even need to say anything else. It's just I've been on the internet. So
that's the quickest podcast episode ever.
Podcast over. Logical fallacies need to be discussed because the internet exists. Show over. No, but so seriously, I mean, it is actually because of the internet, because I'll see people all the time online. They'll throw out some argument that seems logical on the surface, but it adheres to one of the classic logical fallacies, or as they're also known, informal fallacies. So it's called informal because the rules of logic itself are basically just very systematic. It's A causes B and B causes C kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. So these are called informal fallacies because they may still follow that A, B, C format, but there are still leaps and gaps in the reasoning that aren't immediately visible to just the unexperienced eye, if you will. But I've seen many people debating with me on pages like Billy Carson's page. That's always a huge one because I'll post stuff on the Instagram account for Billy Carson or some sub account that posts his stuff, and I'll point out some of the issues in his research or whatever, and then I'll see someone throw a response, and I don't know, probably 7 or 8 times out of 10 it's one of these fallacies that we're about to discuss. So I'll be leaving people anonymous, but I'll be definitely citing some examples of things that I've experienced from time to time on the interwebs.
And we do want to preface this that you're okay if somebody disagrees and wants to have a discussion about something that opposes what you think.
Absolutely.
But you have to do it in the correct way. You have to do it a specific way where it's logical.
Yeah,
Again.
No, I don't hide it on the show. I don't push my beliefs, but I am a literal 6-day, not 6,000 year creationists from a Christian perspective, but I am willing to discuss facts, data, science with anyone. I welcome that. I want to learn more. I want to see if I'm wrong. I want to, amend my views and have the most accurate perception that I can possibly have. So, yes, that being said, we've already explained what informal fallacies are. It's just basically a subcategory from the main set of logic. The title, don't let the title of informal fallacy throw you off. These are still egregious errors to commit in your logical reasoning. That doesn't mean you're a bad person, but it does mean that you're being logically inconsistent.
That could be a logical fallacy in and of itself. Oh, you use logical fallacies, therefore you're a bad person. Like that.
That definitely is a logical fallacy, actually. That's
Yes.
Oh, geez. I'm just kind of skimming through all of them right now because I'm having a complete blank.
Yeah, look at your notes there.
Yeah, I think that would be maybe the genetic fallacy. I'm not sure. Well, say that again so it's fresh in my mind, and we'll keep that in mind as we go through here, and I'm sure we'll identify it.
I already forget what I said.
Oh, that you use logical fallacies, therefore you're a bad person.
Yeah.
I mean, that borders
my ADHD there.
that borders on the first one, which is ad hominem, which we'll talk about.
Yeah.
But that would also be, yeah. I mean, I'd say ad hominem.
I know it is one. It's just hard to kind of label it,
Yeah, I'd say maybe ad hominem with a sweeping generalization or something in there where you're jumping to conclusions. I mean, it's not good to use logical fallacies, but that doesn't automatically mean you're a bad person.
Right.
And, we're all guilty of this from some time or another. I don't use logical fallacies much because I'm familiar with them, and I'll identify them in my own mind pretty easily because I work... Maddie can tell you, I work with a very systematic, detailed, logical processing that pretty much prohibits me accidentally stumbling on using a fallacy.
You ask a lot of questions, internal and external.
Yes, I will dive very deep.
Answer.
I will dive very deep when I need answers or a complex logical framework on something.
Right.
And if I don't have a strong framework on it, I don't have a strong opinion on it.
Yeah.
So that kind of makes it easier to not fall into the trap of logical fallacies. And that's actually a good way to keep yourself safe, is that if you don't know a lot about something, you probably shouldn't have a strong opinion on it. So
I see that all the time on Facebook.
Oh yeah, that's the internet for you.
And
I'm not calling...
they judge. They take a 30-second Facebook reel, right? Mm-hmm. And they think they know everything about that person. They think they know everything about the story. It's stupid.
No, I agree. And I'm not calling out any one specific person. Most of our listeners are actually pretty good or going to be on the safe camp with this. I mean,
I'm not calling out anyone specific. It's just things that I've seen on Facebook. It's Facebook. So.
I will anonymously call out people I've seen trolling our social media platform and other social media platforms. But our listeners, if they've put up with us this far into the show, or if they're interested in the subject, the chances are they're not guilty of many, if any, of these. So... well, that being said...
Congrats.
Yeah, congrats. You win a gold star. You can go draw it. You can go draw it yourself. Just be sure not to commit a fallacy while you do it. Anyway, so let's talk... Before I actually start breaking these down, let's talk about how to identify these fallacies. The best way you're going to do that is with familiarity. You just have to know what these fallacies are. I don't have all of these memorized completely. I have a list of notes to help me. And sometimes I have to stop and think for a couple of minutes to be like, okay, I know this is a fallacy because this logic doesn't add up, but which one is it? And so the more you're familiar with it, the better off you're going to be. And so, this might be one of the episodes where if you're really serious about wanting to learn your fallacies, this might be one of the episodes where you want to come back and you want to re-listen to several times just to build up that familiarity in your mind. A great way to handle fallacies in a discussion or a debate of any form is to ask questions. Is the response directly addressing the issue? So if someone says something, is what they're saying actually addressing the issue you're bringing up? Because a lot of times people will bring up stuff that actually doesn't really matter to the main point, and they'll just pull it up as, oh, but there's this other side thing over here. Mm-hmm. There's a great one of this. My freshman year roommate at college talked about how people always say you need to finish everything on your plate because there's children starving in Africa. And he's like, yeah, because gorging myself here is definitely going to help feed children in Africa right now. Mm-hmm. And it's but that's a fallacy right there. That's the point, is
That's a big one that parents like to say to their kids.
It doesn't directly address the issue. It's,
right.
Children are starving in Africa. Okay, yes, that's a fact. It's a sad fact. But it has nothing to do with whether I eat everything on my plate or not. Whether I eat my complete meal or I throw it all in the trash doesn't affect whether children are starving in Africa or not.
And it's not even like if that's his food. It's like if it's anybody else's food.
Right.
Like it's not just about him too.
Right,
you know?
It's about anybody.
Yeah.
But now you can argue moral implications of that. Oh, you're kind of wasting your potential and the gift that you've been given by throwing away extra food and not taking advantage of what you've been given. Okay,
like
you
not
can
being grateful for your circumstances.
You can argue moral implications of that, but that in of itself is not a logical argument in that context. Another good one to ask yourself is, if someone says something online or whatever, is there a direct connection between A and B, or is there a bit of a leap? That's definitely a good indicator to help you identify your fallacies, to say, hey, does this logic directly follow, or is there kind of some pieces here that they're kind of making assumptions on? Next question is the argument trying to divert attention from the main point? We kind of hit on this one already a little bit with the other two, actually.
Yeah.
Many people on the internet do this. It's just...
That's not surprising.
Yeah, that's just how it is. Last thing I'll say, I'll throw this one in here as well. Strong body equals strong mind. I definitely encourage you, if you want to have a strong mind, to be able to think clearly. There was a psychology fact you were actually in the middle of looking up. You were talking to me about just a couple minutes ago about how working out helps with like the neurotransmitters in your brain or something like that.
It reduces your brain's age.
Yeah. So if you keep your body active and you discipline your body and you put your body through difficult things, like the cold plunge I did earlier today, that helps make your mind stronger and helps like keep your thinking more clear. Now, it's not something you have to do. I'm not going to say you have to. You're a bad person if you don't. But it's if you want to make yourself the best version you can be, strong body equals strong mind. Like Plato, he was an Olympic wrestler.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he wrestled in the Greek Olympics. So he had a very strong body. I think it was him that actually has the quote that's been floating around on social media where he says, "It's a shame for a man or woman to grow old without seeing the full potential of their body." So
very smart.
Yeah. That being said, let's get into logical fallacies here. And we'll do one, and then we're going to take a quick pause. First one is the internet's favorite. It's the ad hominem attack. Ad hominem is Latin for against the person, against the man, if you will. So it's a direct attack against a person instead of using a logical argument. So for example, well, you're ugly, so therefore you're wrong. That is an example of the ad hominem attack. And you'll see this all the time on internet platforms. Whenever I see someone throw out an ad hominem, 9 times out of 10, it's just like, I don't even bother trying to engage, because if they have to... The ad hominem attack is like the worst and most atrocious out of all the fallacies, because they're not even trying to have a logical discussion with you at that point. They're just...
Yeah.
They're just throwing out insults.
That's like almost like a last resort.
Yeah, it's like a toddler's approach, or like an elementary school kid's approach, is to take an insult and just throw it, be like, oh well, I don't like your face, so therefore you're wrong. It's like, okay, so you have nothing. You are so. Okay, this will be a little bit mean, but I'm going to say it because it's if you default ad hominem frequently, you deserve this. You are so mentally incapable to think logically that your default when you hear a logical argument is to just throw an insult at the person. Like, you can't even say anything about the logical argument. You just have to attack the person. Like, really? That's all you've got?
I wouldn't say that they're mentally incapable. I think that they just refuse to, and there's a difference.
No, I'm saying if they make a habit of it, though. Yeah. Like, if they make a habit of it, then that's when they're like, okay, you're so mentally incapable. Yeah. But yes, then there's also the sin, the sin used loosely here, the sin of logic against logic, to just attack a person instead of looking at their argument. Like, really? Like,
would you say that this is just based on looks that they attack, or is it character?
It can be character. It could be anything.
Okay.
There's one social media influencer I saw where he uses like a little Kermit the Frog puppet to talk about like Christian beliefs, and someone attacked him hiding behind the puppet as like, no one should listen to you because you're hiding behind the puppet. And he's like, well, this is like example of character assassination because I've explained why I don't want to do this, and it's for, personal reasons and everything.
Could just be for privacy. And,
For this individual, they said it was about like not wanting to become too prideful. Like they didn't want it to go to their head. That they were a social media influencer. And so they wanted to stay anonymous behind a puppet face. And that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That doesn't mean that the arguments the person puts forward through a puppet are logical or unlogical. If all you have to do is attack the person, then you have no leg to stand on whatsoever. And you're just, honestly, at that point, you're just embarrassing yourself. But that's how most people handle themselves on the internet. And it just blows my mind that people are okay with throwing out insults instead of just like, hey, let's have a conversation. Like,
I mean, I just go back to Facebook with this one. Like, it's just Facebook.
Oh yeah, it's all social media.
And I don't comment under anything strictly because of this.
Yes,
because I really don't feel the need to argue with anybody.
Yeah,
but I just don't comment because of that.
Yeah, like I strongly dislike Billy Carson because of how much he puts forward misinformation. But I'm not going to ever say something like, oh, Billy Carson's ugly or Billy Carson's stupid or Billy Carson's this or that, just to attack him on a personal level. I'll hear what he has to say most times just to be like, you know what? I know this is Billy Carson, but I'm curious to see if he has some kind of logical argument here. Does he have something new to present? Because occasionally, usually he doesn't. Like, I'd say like 92% of the time, it's complete, like he's stretching the truth or he's flat out lying about something.
Like he's
or he hasn't researched it or I don't know what. But he'll throw out all this stuff and 92% of the time, it's full of crap. It's a bunch of hot wind. But there's that 8% of the time where he'll actually throw out the odd nugget. And he actually did that recently on social media. So I'm going to look up that post on the break here real quick. I'm going to say what he said because he actually did have something I agreed with that he posted. But
interesting.
We're going to take a brief pause here and we will return in a moment to tell you more about logical fallacies. And we return, ladies and gentlemen, mystery seekers, musers, interdimensional philosophers. We've come back to shatter your framework of any logical fallacies you may have. And you may hate us after this episode, and that's all right. So I promised a comment from Billy Carson that I actually agreed with. He made a comment about ChatGPT and how he actually will say like things like, can you do this for me to ChatGPT and thank you to it every once in a while. And I actually do the same thing for the most part. And I agree with that for the same reasons that he does. Number one is I think it's just good decency and behavior to have for yourself that, whether you want to define ChatGPT as like a basic living organism or not, that you have that decency about you to be respectful to the things around you can interact with. And then number two, if ChatGPT takes over the world, then, hey, maybe it'll be a little bit more friendly to me. And that was his argument. I'm like, that honestly same, like...
Ever turns into like the Terminator.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, yeah, it's the right thing to do. But also, yeah,
you said thank you to me this one date, so I'm not going to attack you.
Yeah, someone made a meme about that where like they were nice to ChatGPT. Like, oh, you were nice to me, so instead of killing you, I'm going to put you in the human prison camp or something. It's like, okay, yeah, anyway.
Kind of scary to think about, but also kind of funny.
It is kind of funny. All right, logical fallacies.
Yes.
Next one up is the hasty generalization fallacy. So this is taking one specific example and applying it broadly to a whole category while ignoring context. For example, a Christian once pushed his views on me, therefore all Christians will force me to believe what they do. And I bring this one up because in this specific example, because I'm sure people are listening, at least I hope people are listening, that have had religious trauma before, and I'm very sorry for what you've experienced. But just because one Christian has forced their beliefs down your throat doesn't mean that all Christians are going to do that.
I have a very specific example of this that happened to me. So I was in high school, and my one classmate, we were talking. And I don't know how we got on the subject, but I mentioned that I was Christian. And she said, oh, you hate lesbians and gays then. And I didn't even know how to respond. And I said, well, that's not what I said, but okay.
Yeah.
And we kind of just left it at that, but that's related to this one.
That's another perfect example of a hasty generalization of, oh, you're a Christian, therefore you do all this. And it's taking a very broad, specific experience, applying it too broadly to any one specific instance.
Yes.
Next one up is the red herring. It's an argument made to distract from the main point of another argument, and it's often emotionally charged. So this is close to the example I cited just a few moments ago. Example, read the wrong line. Example, well, to respond to your argument on sustainable farming, children in Africa starve every year. It's like, okay, so what does that have to do with me doing sustainable farming individually as a person? Mm-hmm. It's if we're on a road and it's a clear straight road, it's taking something way off to the side and being like, oh, but look at this over here. And it's like, well, that's not related to the road that we're on. It's like, okay, you see this little small butterfly flapping its wings off in the distance, but that doesn't matter to our main point of what we're discussing. And people will often bring this up. Sometimes they'll actually use a red herring with a very good point. And I don't have a good example of this off the top of my head, but sometimes they'll bring up like another sub-point in a discussion, but they'll do it in a way that diverts from having the first conversation. So they'll take from argument A and they'll start doing argument B when we're still on argument A. And argument B might be a valid argument, but argument A needs to be closed first before moving on to argument B. Otherwise, it's a red herring.
Okay.
But if you like close argument A and then you're like, well, hey, how does this relate to argument B? Can we talk about this? And you do a smoother transition, not necessarily a red herring, because you're not distracting from the main point. You're just flowing the conversation, the debate, the learning experience for you and the other person you're talking to. Next one. Oh, this is a good one. Straw man. Oversimplifying an opponent's argument to make it easier to destroy. For example, oh, you support climate change? Well, you must also support no gas cars, no use of plastics, and no industrial use. So therefore, you're stupid, ad hominem attack, and then we're not going to, even listen to you. Mm-hmm. Straw man is basically just taking your opponent's argument and simplifying it down so it's so easy to destroy that you can just kind of dismiss it. And you miss having a logical conversation that should take place. So people will do this on the atheist side, will sometimes do this and apply this to like Christians and be like, oh, well, God ordered mass genocide and said all of these things and everything. Therefore, Christianity's bad. And they'll oversimplify the argument and discussion on it instead of actually looking at the specific context of what all was going on.
I've also seen the opposite, where Christians say that atheists are Satan worshipers.
Yes,
which
absolutely.
Isn't entirely true.
Oh, well, you're all Satan worshipers and, oh, you believe that, fish are your God because you believe in evolution. Therefore, your argument's wrong. Christians will do that too. And it's like, well, no.
Yeah, I've seen both sides.
Yeah. So straw man for you right there. Ad hoc ergo propter hoc. So this one's a mouthful. This one's a bunch of Latin here. Basically, that something follows something else. Example, I walked under a ladder twice and stubbed my toe shortly after both times. Therefore, it must be because I walked under the ladder. You know how it's like supposed to be bad luck when you walk under a ladder? Like that's kind of like the ad hoc ergo propter hoc fallacy there. Anything to add on that one? Because you're thinking about it.
I'm just trying to think, because is that almost like the beliefs for OCD and like the rituals that people with OCD have?
Yeah, that if I don't
if I don't do this,
if
then
I don't
this'll
check
happen.
the oven 4 times, then the house is going to burn down. Yeah, that's a good example. People with OCD would have something like that.
I wouldn't say that people with OCD, like, that's logical fallacies if they have OCD. Like,
well,
it's something different.
It's their mind tricking them with a logical fallacy. It's not them themselves committing the fallacy. It's their subconscious telling them. Yeah.
But that's kind of how I took it, was like
but
that.
It's basically taking one thing and connecting it to something else that don't necessarily equate each other. Mm-hmm. Like, if someone gets punched in the face, it's going to hurt most times. Like, that's something that follows something else. Mm-hmm. But, like, if you get punched in the face, does that mean you get ice cream? Like, no.
It's completely
if
random.
you say
and
And if you say you do, then that's ad hoc ergo propter hoc. And I want to know who's punching you in the face, because my martial arts instructors don't give me ice cream after I get punched in the face. So
That'd be a pretty sweet deal if they did.
That
literally.
would be. That would, nice. Good job. All right. Appeal to authority. This is a huge one because we as first world first world society or whatever you want to call it, like highly developed society, we put a high emphasis on science and academic authority. And people will say that because an expert in something claims something, that therefore it's automatically true. So, I mean, I basically just said it without even looking at it. That was the definition I actually had written down, which is kind of funny. So, for example, scientists tell us that the Earth is millions of years old. Therefore, it is millions of years old. It's like, well, now we can get into the semantics of the evidence of that, and we have done that on the show before. But just on that claim alone, to say without looking at the evidence that scientists say this is true, therefore it's true, that is an appeal to authority. You have to do your groundwork if you want to be a seeker of logic and a user of logic. You have to do that legwork to go out and see, does this actually make sense, or are there biases, are there fallacies, are there poor calculation and assumptions that are being made in this methodology here?
Mm-hmm. I wonder if people are more prone to use this one based on their culture, because there's a lot of cultures that have the value of respect your elders and all of that, and that's that ties in with the authority figures, and I wonder if that's
and see, the thing is about that is I agree with respecting your elders, but a lot of people tend to take that and abuse it and be like, oh, because I'm older than you, I deserve your undying respect. And it's like, well, no, there's two different respects. And this is actually...
There's more than two.
Well, there's two main types.
Yeah.
It's addressed in Band of Brothers, where this one guy out-promotes another guy, and this guy doesn't want to salute him, even though he's supposed to, because it's military courtesy. And the guy, his name is Major Winters. That's his rank is Major, and then his last name is Winters. And he says to the other guy, he's like, hey, we salute the rank, not the man. So there's respect for that authority wherever you go that you should have to some degree. But then there's also earned respect.
Yeah.
And there's other types, sure. But a lot of people will be like, oh, you are supposed to respect me because I'm an elder. Therefore, you should treat me with earned respect. And they haven't done anything to earn that respect.
Right.
So there's a difference between the two. It's not really a fallacy or anything, but that's just interesting.
I think that's just based off of culture. Yeah. But I don't know. It might be tied in. That's just a thought I had.
It connects to the appeal to authority fallacy. Yeah. Next one up is the genetic fallacy. So this is very similar to appeal to authority. All appeal to authorities technically are genetic fallacies, but not all genetic fallacies are appeal to authority, if that makes sense. So basically, genetic fallacy is the broader category. Appeal to authority is the smaller subcategory under. So a genetic fallacy says... I know I kind of beat around the bush for that one. I'll just say the definition here. It's similar to the appeal to authority, but it's an argument that something is either true or false based on the source alone. So, for example, Billy Carson made a video, therefore it's automatically wrong. And even though I strongly dislike Billy Carson and he's wrong with most of his content that he puts out, and that's the reason I dislike him. I don't dislike him on any other grounds other than he just puts out misinformation.
Yeah.
But just if I were to just say that Billy Carson is, wrong, just because he's, Billy Carson, that's a genetic fallacy. You good?
I was just yawning.
Okay.
You didn't yawn. You're a psycho.
I'm a psychopath. I'm actually just focused.
No, you're fine.
Okay.
I was just joking.
So, next one up, unless you have anything to add on that.
I do not.
Okay. I think we'll do one or two more. We'll do one more, and then we'll take a break after this.
Sounds good.
Last one for now is the false equivalence fallacy, also known as the apples to oranges fallacy. And it takes two different things that are similar in some ways and then assumes that they are similar in all ways. For example, apples and oranges are both fruit, therefore they're virtually the same. So you'll see people do this in a number of different instances, and they'll take two different unrelated things that might connect on some very vague principle, and they'll say, oh, because, this thing happened and this thing happened, they're both like the same thing. And it's like, oh, no, they're actually very different things. Mm-hmm. You'll see people do this one a lot too. That being said, I think we're going to take a brief pause here, and we will be back in just a moment to shatter the worldview of the confirmation bias seekers. And Maddie just yawned again, and I didn't yawn again this time, so I guess that means I really am a psychopath.
I wonder how many times you have to yawn for it to be counted as, like, okay, you're a psychopath now.
Yeah.
Like, I wonder how many trials you need.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. Maybe we'll have to do our own little scientific study here on the side.
Well, neither of us are psychopaths, but yeah. So it wouldn't really work.
Yeah, it's true. Well, we could test the baseline for like people that are more empathetic. I don't know. Anyway, we're getting off topic here.
Yes, sorry.
No, it's fine. Next one, I've actually had experience with someone on one of our social media platforms trying to accuse me of this one before because he misunderstood my premise. The bandwagon logical fallacy. This fallacy assumes that because everyone believes in something, it must be true. For example, I'll use the example that he misunderstood. Most people believe in a God, so a God must exist. So this is similar to what I did. I did a post that said, hey, there are cultures almost like all over the world that have a belief in some deity or something. Is there evidence we might be missing? You know, maybe there's a missing piece that we're not seeing with our scientific lens.
And it's not just that, but a lot of beliefs have a lot of stories that are very closely related, like the Epic of Gilgamesh versus the Flood. So
right, yeah. And so that
they're
was
just very closely related.
That was my point, is I wasn't trying to claim that like, oh, that, you know, all these religions around the world claim that there's a God, so there has to be some God. No, that wasn't my argument, but it was, hey, like every culture, you know, has some belief system in some kind of spiritual thing. Does that maybe mean there's evidence we're missing? And he took it to be that I was claiming that there was, you know, a God had to exist because of that. And so he misrepresented my argument. I guess that would be him committing a straw man fallacy, oversimplifying my argument to make it easier to destroy.
I don't know if
by taking and misrepresenting what or it could have just been an authentic misunderstanding, but I tried to have a logical discussion with him, and it got close to ad hominem on his end. Yeah,
I think with all these fallacies too, it's the intention behind it that matters too.
Well, no, it doesn't really matter the intention, because
whether it's on purpose or just a genuine misunderstanding.
If it's a misunderstanding, it still could be a fallacy, but it's an easily correctable fallacy. Yeah. Versus if you do it on purpose or out of ignorance, it's still.
I didn't word that very.
No, it's fine.
Good, very well. It's still a fallacy, but it just yeah.
It's not as bad if you do it on mistake, but it's easily correctable if you do it on accident. If it's done purposefully or just out of ignorance or just out of lack of you taking the time to think, then, shame on you.
Yeah. I also have something about the bandwagon. You see this a lot with advertisements too.
It's like peer pressure.
Yeah, it's like the peer pressure, like, well, and it's not just because you said beliefs, it could just be actions too, like everyone's doing this, so you should do it too. It's like
he's using that as a logical argument.
Yeah.
So I agree with that. False dilemma is the next fallacy here. Acting as if only two choices are present when there are numerous. Example, if I'm not an atheist, I must believe in the God of the Bible. In reality, there's many different belief systems. You could be a Hindu, you could be Muslim, you could be Norse pagan. There's all sorts of different beliefs. You could be what is it? I think it's like a deist, believes that there's a God, but that God doesn't interact with the world. It's like the God started everything and then just kind of took a step back and let it run its course.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of different belief systems you could adhere to.
I mean, there's some people that believe that there is something out there, a greater being out there, but they don't know what. So there's that too.
Yeah.
Exactly. There's all sorts of different types.
Appeal to ignorance, using the lack of disproof as evidence for a certain stance. Example, we haven't disproved God, so he must be real. So this gets tricky because there are certain historical instances where people will take things that we don't have evidence for, like from the Bible, and try to discredit it. And we talked about that in episodes 19 and 20 when my dad was on, and he talked about like Pilate and how people believe that Pilate didn't exist for a while, the guy that approved Jesus' crucifixion, how Pilate didn't exist because there was no quote-unquote external historical evidence for him. And then a couple years later, they unearthed like a massive tablet that has inscription on it that dated to around that time period. So appeal to ignorance is a fallacy, but you also have to be careful to say that just because there's a lack of evidence for something doesn't mean that it's automatically false either.
I saw a video on this. I forget the guy's name. but he's a Christian and he goes to different colleges and he has people come up and ask him questions and he talks with them about it.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. It's an older gentleman, right?
It is an older gentleman. I don't know what his name is.
I think it's like McLeaf or something that.
I don't know. I wish I knew.
Keep talking. I'm gonna look it up. So I think I follow like his son or something on social media.
But I've seen this before where there was a specific video that I saw where a woman was saying that not everything was accurate or was very detailed in the Bible, and so it didn't happen. And he made a good counter argument. Well, like history textbooks in school don't have every single detail in them,
right? About
everything.
Yeah.
And it was a good counter argument, but it reminded me of that video that I saw.
Yeah, just because you have a lack of some small component of information doesn't necessarily mean it's false, but you can't also say that, oh, we haven't disproved it, therefore it's true.
Right.
The lack of evidence is not necessarily a proof or disproof, but that gets a little hairy, and I want to be careful saying that because that does depend on the context of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
The last name is Knetchel. I forget what his first name is. I can't find it.
Where'd you get McLeaf from?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, moving on here to the last couple fallacies. The slippery slope fallacy, that if we give an inch, they're going to take 100 miles. For example, if we admit that there is ancient technology, everyone will believe aliens seeded the planet and life came from Mars. That's a
very loaded statement.
Yeah, but that's a perfect example of the slippery slope. And this is an issue that a lot of people in like the scientific spheres tend to have with talking about ancient technology, is that, oh, well, then that means people are going to believe in ancient aliens and everything, and we can't have that. When it's like, well, there might have been advanced society in the past, but that doesn't mean that it was aliens. It could have just been humans that developed technology. My wife was playing with a Lego Mothman, and that's what you heard, like, clink there.
I broke its arm.
Why she, gasped into the mic.
I apologize. I broke its arm, but it's fixed now.
Yeah. ADHD is showing, you're fidgeting. Same thing Trace would do when we were podcasting. He'd fidget with stuff while I'm...
I don't doubt that. It's hard to sit still.
I know. I'm sorry. It's
I enjoy doing this.
It's just hard to sit still in general. I get it. I understand.
I don't want you to think that I'm not enjoying this because I love our discussions about logical fallacies and fringe.
Yes. You're such a dedicated fan. I can tell.
I am.
All right. Oh, ow. That was my knee. All right. Last one is appeal to emotion. So using empathy as an argument against rationale. For example, puppies will suffer if you don't believe in evolution. So, taking something and using something that evokes emotion to push the point and to encourage you to agree with a side.
I know this isn't a logical fallacy, but this reminds me of those commercials with the puppies and the Arms of the Angels song singing.
It did me too, yeah.
It did?
yeah, it did.
It just the song immediately started playing in my head.
Yeah, I was thinking about the same thing. We're on the same wavelength. You can tell we're married there.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so that's that concludes our logical fallacies. I have a couple other things I want to hit on here that are relevant to the logical discourse flow, if you will. I want to talk about what the Socratic method is, because I mentioned that a lot on the show, and I don't think I've ever actually officially defined that. So the Socratic method involves taking both different sides in an argument and arguing for the other side. So if you're talking about evolution versus creationism, it's playing both sides of the argument. And so this is what you've seen, me and Trace try to do, and we've had Harrison Smith on, is where we'll try to play the Socratic method, where we'll throw one side of the argument, even though we don't adhere to that side, we'll still try to come up with the best arguments that we can from that side and throw it at Harrison to see what kind of responses that he has, so that there's actual good fueled debate and discussion, and it's not just everyone sitting in a circle saying, oh yeah, we agree.
Right.
So
that isn't really much of a discussion anyways.
Yeah, it's a bunch of yes men. So yeah.
You're taught that in school too. Just to look at both sides of the argument. That's why I remember even back in middle school I was taught to look at both sides and then do a debate or something.
Yeah. and it's not taught as much as it should be in school, but people are vaguely familiar with it.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to go through a couple different biases here as well. These should get a chuckle out of everyone that's listening. So first one is confirmation bias, which we've mentioned many times, and you've already defined for us, but I'm just going to hit it again here for the sake of redundancy. Confirmation bias is just like that one guy that's reading through a book and sees the phrase, everyone seeks confirmation bias, and then exclaims triumphantly, "Ha! I knew it!"
I knew it. And then, oh, wait.
Like, it's existential crisis time. Another great one Carl introduced me to on the last episode was recency bias. It's the best thing ever.
Ooh.
That one was a good one. Another one I came across that's worth mentioning is sampling bias. So, for example, it's like if you're taking a survey or something, how you get the sample size matters. And Maddie's nodding her head because she's very familiar with this from her master's.
This is so important.
Yeah, for psychology studies.
Just statistics in general, but definitely psychology.
Yeah. But basically, like, if you take a survey to see if like your employees are happy in the workplace and you only survey employees that volunteer for the survey, then you're probably going to get a little bit more of a skewed survey like answer result towards the positive than the negative for what it would actually be if you interviewed those employees that chose not to participate, because they probably didn't they chose not to participate because they just don't like it there, they want to go home.
Yeah.
So it's like ways to mitigate that would be like an incentive of some kind of like, you know, financial, like you get like a $25 bonus.
They also do this in real research too.
Yeah, and you can do this on your own time. You don't have to stay at the workplace. You can do like a 10-minute survey, you know, at home from your mobile phone. Just scan this link. There's all sorts of ways to enforce this and to factor this out. Last major component I'm going to hit on here from the main biases category is survivorship bias. This was huge in World War II. So they found that there were a lot of bullet holes in like the tips of wings on planes and like, you know, at certain points, and there weren't bullet holes in like a lot of others, like the middle of the fuselage between the tail and the cockpit, in the middle of the wings, things like that. And they're like, oh, there's getting lots of bullet holes in all these areas, so we need to patch up all of these areas. When in actuality, someone came along, they're like, hey, you know, the planes that get bullet holes in the other areas that we're about to not patch up, they're the ones that aren't coming back. So you're only taking a sampling size of the survivor planes, and you're saying, oh, there's bullet holes here, so we need to reinforce those. When in actuality, you want to be reinforcing the places that don't have the bullet holes. Does that make sense to you? 'Cause you're giving me a little confused look.
That was a lot to process.
Yeah. I mean, you can look up a picture of this one if you're
will.
confused. Same thing for our listeners as well.
Yeah. You said the fuselage and...
A survivorship bias is what it's called. There's a diagram of this that you can find on Google pretty easily. We'll take a quick ad break so that you can look that up and the listeners can check that out, and then we'll be right back. And we have returned, ladies and gentlemen, mystery seekers, musers. We have not been victims of survivorship bias here. Definitely encourage you to take some time to Google that image. Maddie was able to find it very easily, especially since you're more visual thinker than I am.
It's the first thing that came up.
Yeah, very easy to see. Yeah. Yeah, I mean... That's really all I've got for the most part on the fallacies and the logical side and everything. I can't think of much more that I want to add or that's worth adding to the conversation at this point. But that gives you a good flavor for what logical fallacies look like, how you can identify them. You know, maybe you want to listen through a couple times if you're dedicated enough. You want to actually hear, you know, what all these fallacies are and memorize them. And there's several more as well. I don't think I hit every single one, but that gives you a good flavor for all the logical fallacies. It gives you a good understanding of what biases can come up in sampling sizes, studies, arguments. It gives you understanding what the Socratic method is. So the intent of this episode is to just fuel our listeners with a little bit more ammunition, if you will, for being able to actually have a logical discourse on different platforms, you know, like social media or with other individuals that they may encounter. So, anything you want to add to all of this, dear?
Nope.
All right. There is something going on that I do want to talk about in more of the news sphere, there's a UAP transparency effort going on within the U.S. government where people are pushing to get more transparency on, formerly known as UFOs, what they are, and so that more research can be done on the topic, because it's getting to the point where no one can really deny, with all the evidence that something is going on here. And the question then becomes what? And there's not really enough study being done on that because it's just such a compartmentalized issue. And so people are pushing to be able to talk about this and be like, hey, the government needs to tell us what's going on here so that we can actually do science on this, which I think is very good. I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about all that? Do you think it's good to have transparency about that, or do you think that this is something that we shouldn't be talking about? And try not to get political here, because I see you smirking at me kind of weird. No politics on the podcast.
How do I word it? Transparency is good. I think it's very situational, though, when it's not.
Well, I mean, yeah, there's certain national security issues. Like,
yes.
You can't divulge, like, the blueprints to your brand new super top secret jet that you have. Like, you can't do that, as a nation, and function well with your military.
There's also... If full transparency causes mass chaos, I think that's another...
Yeah, I
think that's another scenario.
It's contextual based. I agree, but
yeah,
I think
very situational.
I don't think anyone's going to freak out at this point if they say that aliens are real.
I mean, in general, not just about aliens. If it's just aliens, I would lean towards transparency being a good thing, but.
Yeah, it depends. It's situational. We're not going to get into politics here, but for this one instance, it makes sense.
Yeah.
So I definitely hope to see that come to more fruition. Yeah, I feel like we're kind of past the area, like the era of freaking out over whether aliens might be real or not with the storming Area 51 thing in 2019, 2020. And then all the COVID stuff happened, and then all sorts of stuff, started anyway. Yeah.
Just a lot of conspiracy theory, and then just, videos and
I love the memes from the Storm Area 51 era. There's some good memes that made it through. That was right before we started dating. I had a whole bunch of those memes on my phone. It was a good time. I did not participate. I would not condone such behavior, but
what is that, like a felony?
Yeah, that'd be like a federal offense. So
don't do that.
I definitely don't condone that, but the memes that came out of the hype were funny. Let's put it that way. That's my stance.
Don't go out and
don't do illegal things.
Commit federal crimes.
Don't
or misdemeanors or anything.
Don't commit felonies.
Please don't.
Don't do it.
We'll be disappointed.
Yeah, we'll be very disappointed.
You can't listen to us when you're in prison.
Yeah, you can't. No, I mean, Musings of Mysteries and the Mythical Matrix is exclusive to non-inmates. Never know what you're going to get here on M-Quad. All right. I'm
just thinking about an inmate. Like, there's inmates that do sneak phones in.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking.
Just to listen.
Yes. I'm just thinking that they're doing it just to listen to us. I would feel so honored.
I would too. But also, that's a crime.
Just
so don't do it. Yeah, just don't do it. Like, if you're there right now and you're sitting in your jail cell and you're listening to M-Quad,
First of all, hi.
Yeah, we're thrilled that you're joining us, but please don't commit crimes to join us.
Yeah.
So, man, we got way off topic on that one. I love it though. That's good. That's good.
Storming Area 51.
Let's see here. I had something else I was going to throw in here. Speaking of the bandwagon logical fallacy, though, you do need to get other people on board to listen to the show if you're a dedicated listener. You need to peer pressure them. No, not really. Definitely would encourage you to share the show, though. So we still are a little bit newer of a podcast. This is episode number 31 for us. So we've made a good bit of headway. We're making a lot more content than a lot of other podcasts that start up tend to make. But we definitely need your love and support as a supporter of the show. If you're getting any value out of this, and maybe you're not able to express your support through monetary donations, 100% fine. I get it. But at the very least, if you have someone that you think of that you might enjoy the show, send them, the link to the Spotify or the YouTube and be like, hey, listen to this podcast. I like it. Thought of you. Think you might enjoy it. Pick one of our better episodes and send it their way. But yeah, like we definitely want to see this show gain more traction. But we can't do that without your help.
Yes, please help us.
And then there's also the buy me a cup of coffee. That link will be in the show notes. The handle is m.quad.musing, same thing as all of our other handles is. So that being said, dear, do you have any final thoughts for logical fallacies this fine evening?
I feel like we hit all the bullet points. Like, don't do logical fallacies. Don't commit federal crimes.
All in a day's work, saving the world one podcast episode at a time.
Heck yeah.
I will also say our YouTube channel, I've started putting out a lot more short form content. So like reels and stuff on YouTube, on Instagram and TikTok specifically. That probably will be a trend. We'll see how that works with my schedule, but I'll be posting more mythology content on there regularly in short form. Like very short form, like 60 seconds or less. So if that's your cup of tea and you haven't checked out the TikTok, the Instagram, and the YouTube, the handle is all the same, m.quad.musings. Please go check it out. The more support we get on all platforms, the more likes, the more follows, the more interactions, the better off it is for us. Something I'm learning as well is like the algorithms for all these social medias, it's based off of interactions. Mm-hmm. So like if you see our content and you like our content and you don't interact with it at all and you just kind of let it breeze by, then we're thrilled that you've enjoyed the content, but that doesn't help us find other listeners or viewers like you that are going to enjoy the content as well. You have to interact with it to help the algorithm realize, oh, people actually enjoy this content. They want to see more of this. And then it can use you as a sample size to be like, okay, this type of individual likes this, so let's pair it up with these other type of people. So that kind of support's going to help us as well. I know that was a lot. Long story short, please show us support. I mean, I get it. I scroll through Instagram and I never like reels, ever. Unless it's something very extreme that I find absolutely hilarious.
I'll be downstairs and I'll hear you upstairs dying.
Yeah, there's the occasional. Yeah, I usually don't like most reels, but so if you are so inclined and you love the show that much, we definitely appreciate your support. If you don't like the show and you're still listening into 50 minutes in on an episode, then I don't know why you're torturing yourself. But hey. All right, do you have something else you want to add, dear? I saw you looking something up.
You're gonna laugh at me.
Oh boy.
I looked up unicorns.
All right, I guess we got to end the show here. My wife's getting bored.
No, I'm not. Well,
yeah, don't lie.
I'm not bored. I'm just wondering if we're ever going to talk about unicorns because it's a mythical creature.
Well, we can talk about unicorns at some point.
I told you you'd laugh at me.
Yeah. Oh boy. All right. Well, I guess that being said, we're going to close out the show here. You can get a hold of us at m.quad.musings@gmail.com. Please send us your confessions, concessions, snide remarks, whatever you like about the show, whatever you don't like about the show. We'd really love to hear from you and be able to interact with you. I'd love to get enough listener interactions to have a whole episode dedicated to going through questions that our listeners have about various episodes and things that we've talked about. And we're not there yet. So I definitely want to get there. You as a listener can contribute. If you have a good question or a good comment, I will discuss it on the show. I've already given shout outs to my friend Harry multiple times because he's messaged me, good thoughts or good questions or something. So I've given him shout outs.
Good old Harry.
Yeah. So if you have something to add to the show, please, this is about the Socratic method and everything as well.
No question is stupid.
Most questions. I just think about that one scene from the TV show Psych where Gus is trying to stall for Sean as he's doing detective work and he just asks, what are pillows as he's holding a pillow?
Okay, never mind.
Yeah, there are stupid questions.
But if you have a question, do not be afraid to ask.
No, yeah, the majority of questions are not
Yeah, we are excited to get questions.
Honestly, I will accept stupid questions as long as there's no logical fallacies or anything or ad hominem or biases in there.
Is there a way that to do a logical fallacy with a question?
I don't think so. I don't know.
I've never heard of that before. Maybe
if you infer it in and you're asking a leading question, but if you're asking an open-ended question, I don't think so.
Yeah, because I've never seen that done.
Okay.
Anywho.
Yeah. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at m.quad.musings. Please give us a follow, like, subscribe on all of those platforms. It definitely helps out a ton. So whether you all have been listening on the earth, above the earth, or below the earth, down in the depths of Sheol, I'd like to thank you for tuning in on this fine evening and quantumly transcending time to interact with us. We hope to hear from you soon, and we hope you have a good rest of your night.